This is Washington Policy Center's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Education. We break down the latest in what's happening in education policy for Washington State and how to create the best future for parents and students. Welcome to this episode. My name is Donald Kimball. I'm here with our Center for Education Director, Lieve Finna. We're here to bring you the latest news in education, both in the state and nationally. We just ended our legislative session in Washington State, so let's do an overview. What are the highlights that you see, Lieve, in terms of what passed and the budgets and where funding's going? In fact, let's start with the budgets. What do you see with school spending amounts in this finalized budget that passed?
Well, like every session that I've watched so far for the last 16 years, they've given more money to the public schools in the supplemental budget, an increase of $600 million. And if you include the federal funds, another increase of $1.2 billion in federal funds. So we're talking $1.8 billion increase in spending in the public schools. So there you go. They have built in inflation increases for pay and so that's what they've done with the extra money. I was disappointed because the budget provided only $7.8 million in enhancement funding for the public charter schools when the choice was between the Senate budget had 11 million for this enrichment funding for charter schools, and the House budget had 7.8 million, and they chose the lower amount in the final budget, which goes to show you what the attitude is towards public charter schools in Washington State by the people who are in charge of writing these budgets. They are trying to starve charter schools of their funding. This is the enhancement funding that was to try to reduce the discriminatory policy we have in the state where we don't give public charter schools local levy funding, we don't give them capital funding. So they're operating at a financial deficit, even though these children are public education children that have just decided to go to a public charter school instead of to their traditional public school. Well, it just shows you that the impact of funding is not everything. The way you run the school is much more important. And these public charter schools, even though they're getting less money and they have minority children in their schools, low income children, are getting better results than the traditional school. So this is why the public system is trying to starve them out of existence, because they don't like the fact that with less money, they can get better results for students because of the way they organize themselves.
It seems
So
like,
that's,
yeah,
yeah.
charter schools there also have a little bit more accountability in terms of being able to leave or change, if there are bad results, which I don't know, it strikes me as a little bit humorous when lots of the legislators were talking about how they want to work and teachers and schools want to work directly with parents when, the initiative passed that established parental rights. But then, any kind of movement towards a system that gives teachers and parents a real, kind of partnership in things like charter schools or communities, they don't seem to be as keen to give them money. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy there.
Well, it is so interesting. So here within the public school system, we're celebrating the fact that parents are now have the right to be notified what's happening to their child in the public schools. Well, I think that's kind of small ball, really, when you think about it. Parents really should have the right to control the funding and decide where the funding goes so that the child can attend the school that best meets his or her needs. That's obviously the direction we should be tending. Now, I don't want to minimize what happened with that parental notification initiative. The fact that there was 49 votes in this and virtually unanimous passage in the Senate and 58 to I think it was 58 to 15 or something like that. It was a overwhelming passage in the House as well. That's going to go into law that requires the public schools to notify parents about what they're teaching the children, about medical services that they're being referred to, about all these changes that are all these ideological changes that are affecting students. Children are for some because of this ideology in the schools, many children are trying to change their gender, which is just shocking to me because they can't change their gender, but they're changing their names at school, and the schools are hiding have until this parental notification initiative passed. They've been hiding this information from parents, and that is part of the reason why there was such energy behind that initiative. And now that schools have gotten the message that no longer are they to hide from parents this important information. And I mean, if you're the public schools have to acknowledge that the source of these children are parents. and that their source of the revenue is the education of children and the collaboration of parents with the schools. And so when you hide information from parents, this is just not the way to go. Parents are the source of all this, and they need to be respected and treated with respect by the schools. And so I'm hoping this is going to change direction towards a little more respect towards parents by the public school system. So the other part of this legislative session is that the top-down efforts by the superintendent to control curriculum choices, the controversial curriculum, those were passed. House Bill 2331, Senate Bill 5462. Those are bad bills. Those are reducing the local control that actually is the foundation for the trust that parents and community members have for their schools. It's this local control. So they're not listening. There's a segment of the public school establishment that is not listening, and they're saying, no, we're going to force these school districts to teach the ideas and concepts that we don't like, that local school districts don't like. The state officials are deciding, we don't care what you want in your local schools. We're going to make you teach this information. And that is just going to lead to more distrust in the public schools and more initiatives like the parental notification initiative and more efforts towards school choice, frankly. I think it's very interesting. The tougher that they get about teaching these false ideologies, the more movement away from the schools. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
And on that, do we see any kinds of movements towards that because and towards school choice specifically in Washington State? Are we seeing any rumblings?
Yes, we actually are. There's a group called Restore Washington that is going to be that just had a ballot title fight with the WEA over putting a school choice initiative on the ballot this fall of 2024. It's called Restore Washington, and soon they're going to be collecting signatures. And I read over the weekend that they're going to do the same uh, method as these previous six initiatives. They're going to make the initiative to the legislature. So they're going to have until the end of December to collect signatures, as opposed to so it's not going to be it's not going to be on the fall ballot
Got
in
it.
November. It's going to be referred to the next legislature. If I have this right. Now, I just read this one notice from them, but that's what I'm seeing, that maybe they have decided not to, because if they have two routes. They can go straight to the ballot, which requires them to collect signatures by July, or they can go as these prior six initiatives have done. They refer to the legislature first, and if the legislature doesn't pass it, that goes on the ballot in 2025. You see, so that's
Got it.
maybe the strategy they're following.
Okay. Well, that's positive to hear. And then the last thing for Washington, I think that we wanted to touch on was again, once in the budget, what is the status of money going towards recovery from COVID learning loss and the shutdowns and the adverse effects that that had on children?
That's a great question. And of course, I look for that this year because I've been talking about the COVID learning loss. I'm not the only person. All the researchers and all the major education institutions, universities across the country that follow what happened to the students during the extended COVID school shutdowns, they're all saying that there's this cohort of students that has lost significantly their learning because of the shutdowns. 18 months losing school is going to clearly create a problem for children that didn't get the fundamentals of math or reading. And so everyone is saying the logical thing to do is to provide intensive individual tutoring, because it has to be individual, because you can't do one size fits all here, because every parent reacted differently. Some children were not as impacted as badly as other children. So you have to individually assess where they're at, give them tutoring, and help them catch up. So I was disappointed to see that even though there were some bills to give money directly to families, that the Republicans had a couple of bills to give $500 grants directly to families so they could hire the tutor themselves. All we have in the state budget is $1 million. In this new budget that was just passed, there were two different references in the budget to individual tutoring. One to provide $1 million to a contractor to provide interactive individual math tutoring online for everyone. And that benefits the contractor. Doesn't necessarily benefit anybody yet. We don't know if he can deliver. And two, $1 million to school districts for individual tutoring. So it's obviously not a sincere effort.
Well, that's unfortunate to hear, but maybe we can have some, further budgets, try to recuperate this loss, or
Yes.
better yet, we can have some, freedom of choice to allow students to go where they are best excelling, which schools are going to provide that kind of instruction that they
Yes.
need to recover. I think, if the if the transparency that the shutdowns provided, in the sense that a lot of parents saw what their students were learning through remote learning options, and if that wasn't enough, just the very fact that COVID shutdowns caused students to fall behind is just another reason why school choice matters so much, because we need to be distributing the most efficient ways for students to learn. And that's not a one size fits all thing. There's not going to be one curriculum that is best for every student. And so being able to freely transfer and have that school choice is so important for parents, even if there wasn't a moral component, which I would argue there is. But even if you're just talking from an efficiency standpoint, that is going to help recover those losses that the shutdowns incurred. So hopefully we can see some kinds of movement on
Well,
that.
your point is so the facts relating to this is answers your point so well, because remember, the federal funds that we got in this state, $2.8 billion and only $3 billion to help the schools recover from COVID, some of which was, of course, to do the safety measures in place, but a lot of the money, some between $300 and $600 million, was provided for school districts to use to help the kids catch up from COVID. And what happened? That money largely got diverted to giving everybody pay increases. So here we have a lifetime an actual uh, experience of what happens when you give the system money for a specific purpose. Often it even and the purpose is extremely important to do, given shutting down the entire school system for 18 months. And everybody agrees that the kids got hurt disproportionately. Everybody should agree we should help them catch up. What happens with this money? It doesn't get used for that purpose. It just shows you that if you really want the money to get used for the purpose intended, you really need to give it directly to the families who are the most interested, have the close the interest of the child closest to heart. No school official cares as much about a child's future and education as a parent, and that is the basic uh, 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 you know, uh, I don't know, the world impulse that the school choice answers. Okay, school choice answers that, gives parents uh, a means to uh, be efficient in this choice, and the result will be a proliferation of schools of all kinds for children with special needs, for children who are highly gifted, for children who are more interested in sports, for children who are interested in whales, for children who are interested in any kind of thing, arts, theater. The children come in all kinds of packages. They need to be a lot of what happens to children is that they get turned off by the one size fits all program, that they don't that doesn't resonate in their hearts, or doesn't excite them about education. So I mean, seriously, school choice is going to remake the world. It's so great. I'm so
Yeah,
excited about it.
absolutely. Well, and there's, some breakaway examples of schools like that do focus and individualize, and they're not meant for every student, and they're not supposed to, and not every student should go there. But, you have something like School of the Arts, I believe, in Tacoma, has produced a lot of
Yes,
really great,
yes,
music design or audio engineer or video, all these great things. Great people come from there, and there are plenty of examples like that. Anyway, let's
yes,
move on to the national scene here real quick in the
yes.
last couple minutes we have.
Yeah.
What are we seeing on the school choice front? Some big developments have happened since we've talked last.
Well, it's amazing. So last week, Wyoming passed a school choice bill to allow the money to follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. Wyoming. Normally, you don't expect it out of a rural state like Wyoming, because they're generally very small school districts out far away from large urban centers, and they uh, often don't embrace school choice because they see no need for it. Wyoming has now passed a school choice law. That's so big. And in addition to that, this happened last week. Alabama, the state of Alabama, has passed universal school choice, making Alabama the 11th state in the country to have universal school choice. It's being phased in with low income families accessing the money first, but it's universal for everyone. It's tremendous. Alabama, think of that. And then, of course, last week we had the primary election in Texas, and that was a ground shaking event also, because many of the rural Republicans who voted against school choice. Now, the numbers are all kind of, there were 21 who voted against school choice. Five of them decided not to run for reelection. That left 16. The the It was decided by everyone that these rural Republicans who were against school choice, against the platform of the Republican Party in Texas, would be challenged by primary Republicans in the primary that favored school choice. And lo and behold, the result was that something like 77% of those primary challengers won. So 4 went on to a runoff, 7 won outright, something like that. So this is setting up a legislature in Texas that is poised to, in the fall, hopefully would pass school choice, universal school choice. That's 5.5 million students. Texas is one of the largest states. It would be like a tsunami hitting the shores of Lake Washington, of the shores of Washington State. So I'm definitely encouraged by that. And also, what I also liked there was the clear message that's being sent that that Republicans endorsed by the union are now suspect in the minds of the public, because everyone knows the union hates school choice because it threatens their monopoly control over the public schools, over the public policy of the schools. And so this is a fight now being set up between parents and the union. And Republicans should not align themselves with a union that opposes giving options to parents. Parents are a powerful political force, and they are gaining power by making more demands and realizing what options are available to them through school choice.
Absolutely. Yeah. The results are shocking. If anyone has interest, I highly recommend looking at it. There were just quite a few incumbents who were ousted from this, and really that was the defining issue of this whole campaign in Texas. So there's clearly a strong movement from parents, and if you're in Washington and you can look to these states and see, parents have a lot of power to move the needle and to do so in very strong ways. So definitely it is worth taking up this mantle to fight, if you are inclined to do so. Well, thank you so much, Lee. We're going to probably be continuing this series beyond the legislative session. It will most likely happen on an every other week basis. So please stay tuned. Make sure to keep following us here for that, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, Donald.